The US-led coalition has attacked the Houthis in Yemen. 60 targets were hit in 16 different locations. Over 100 precision-guided bombs and missiles were launched by aircraft, submarines and warships. They targeted command and control nodes, munition depots, launching systems, production facilities and air defense radar systems used by the Houthi rebels. Now the Houthis have been targeting merchant shipping in the Red Sea by firing ballistic missiles, cruise missiles and drones at them. It's one of the most fascinating aspects of maritime warfare ever seen. Now the Houthis have threatened to retaliate for these US-led attacks. Will the war spread? And joining me to discuss this are former Navy spokesperson Captain D.K. Sharma, geopolitical expert Pramit Pal Chaudhari and my colleague Aditya Kaul. Gentlemen, are we looking at the most dangerous moment of the last 3 months? Pramit, I want to start by asking you this. Is this the tipping point? Will the war spread beyond the second theatre of the Yemen conflict?
See, one of the questions, my sense is Iran doesn't actually want to have it spread. Definitely they don't want it spread to Iran directly. They have their own economic problems, but they've also been reasonably cautious. They like the fact that Saudi Arabia, UAE are being pilloried in the Arab world.
Right.
They like the fact that Israel is bogged down in Gaza, but they're not interested in getting into being in the crossfire of anything right now. So they're actually sitting in a very nice position where they're getting a lot of, they're winning a lot of points in the Islamic world, in the Arab world, for really minimal cost. Now they're clearly supporting the Houthis, but keep in mind that the Houthis play their own games as well. There's a limit to how much Iran controls them. So my sense is Iran has no problems with what's happened here. This makes them look good. The question is whether the Houthis are now getting a sense that we, and who are originally really just a militia in Yemen, now dominating Yemen, but now are getting a lot of international play, and they may like that. And whether they decide to go beyond what Iran's, in my view, carefully calibrated responses to everything is a big question. But so far, keep in mind, the Houthis have killed nobody. The ships, but they had a problem with killing anybody. A lot of the missiles and drones are shot down. And they've had a number of their ships destroyed, their small attempts to board vessels. Even this response, 60 missiles were fired, only 5 people killed. And they were very clearly, therefore, fired at times and at targets where there were very low numbers of people. Both sides are trying to hold back here and sending messages to each other. I think this will continue. It'll be a sitzkrieg. It'll be a very slow burn action. Ultimately, the Houthis are more interested, and the Iranians are more interested in imposing economic costs, both against Israel. Port of Eilat now has 80% drop in terms of shipping, but also keep in mind against Egypt, a country that Iran does not have a good relationship with, and which is in many ways seen as a proxy for Saudi Arabia and UAE by then.
And Egypt is being strangled as we speak because of the Suez Canal. Revenues have just crashed.
They have taken more damage than anybody else.
Absolutely. And Aditya, this point that Pramit made, that you're looking at actually 3 conflict zones that have unfolded over the last 2 years. Russia, Ukraine, Israel, Gaza, and then finally you have the Houthis in Yemen with fighting one of the most astonishing kind of wars where no one dies, as Pramit mentioned. Do you see the prospect, the fact that Iran is a big player now? Foreign Minister Jaishankar is headed there in the next couple of days. What will you talk to them about?
Well, certainly the shipping routes, certainly the safety of the corridor, really, that would be on top of the agenda. But it's inevitable that this is going to spread. Both the Americans and the Iranians may have tried that they shouldn't escalate, they shouldn't spread really
should hold back
beyond the 2 wars that are already ongoing right now. But it seems that the rebels and these people are very much active. A lot of international vessels and ships have been targeted in the last 2 months very frequently, and in a very movie style abduction and kidnappings happening. And we've had the Indian ships as well, which have been targeted, and a lot of international vessels have had Indian crew members inside it as well. So I think it is going to escalate. To what level is something that we need to see. with the action that has been seen today, with India and US and UK together attacking along with support of multiple other countries, clearly is an indication that they are not going to look the other way. There's going to be a strong response, and the Houthis have already said that there will be a swift response and they should wait for it. So I think it's clearly going to escalate, but again, I think India is going to play a role, not exactly of a mediator, but of a peacenik here, and say that, you know, the merchant shipping routes in these particular areas, the Red Sea, the Gulf of Aden, needs to be secure. You know, humanitarian aid, etc., needs to be protected at all costs. But will these rebels really agree is a big question.
Yeah, absolutely. As Pramit mentioned, they might have had a taste of, you know, their 5 minutes in the global sun. And Captain Sharma, this point that Aditya was making, and indeed Pramit said that as well, the possibility that this could actually spill over. We're looking at near historic deployments of the Indian Navy in the Indian Ocean and the Arabian Sea and Red Sea. What would the Navy now do, given the fact that this war threatens to escalate? The Houthis could strike, you know, hit Saudi Arabia and UAE as they've threatened. What would be our response there in the Red Sea and Arabian Sea?
I really don't know whether India will venture out into that area, but as we see today, this was almost coming. 3 days back, the US had given them a warning that stop this attacks on the, you know, white shipping, because it is affecting one and all. It is affecting the world economics, and a lot of, you know, the containers are stuck on the north side of Suez, and here we are, you know, trying to do a kind of a deterrent patrol so that no untoward incident happens. But there is no guarantee. You see the continent of, I mean, see the spread of Yemen. It is hundreds of nautical miles, and from where the missiles are coming, who's feeding them the position, and this was almost a given that if they don't stop it, the Prosperity Guardian, which was doing all the job on the sea, had to shift gears and have to now deteriorate or maybe diminish their capability to launch these attacks. Otherwise, this problem will, you know, they will achieve their aims of disrupting the traffic. Once the traffic is disrupted, that means they have an upper hand, which is not allowed them. I mean, so these are global commons. This is where everybody has a right to go, and just because you have sympathy with something which is happening on ground does not mean that you will affect the whole economics, the whole trade of the world. I don't think it will be allowed, and the way they have, you know, come down on them like a ton of bricks, you will see it repeating, and a deterrent has to be shown on ground to them that this will not be accepted. And I don't think Indian Navy as of now or India will enter that part of the world, because we as such have a great area of responsibility. We are looking after both the Houthi rebels as well as the anti-piracy problem, which was suddenly, you know, cropped up after so many years of lull.
They've picked on that opportunity to move in, the Somali pirates. But I want to ask Pramit this. Pramit, given the fact that the Houthis were the first to literally attack economic targets, you know, wage economic warfare on Saudi Arabia with the Aramco strike 5 years back, which again came completely out of the blue. No one expected that. Do you think they could be pulling off some surprises as they've threatened to do so now with the UAE and Saudi Arabia?
Well, I think the Abikek attack that you mentioned, in many ways, is Iran/Houthis deterrent against Saudi UAE getting involved. You'll notice that despite the fact that they and their ally Egypt are affected by what's happening in the Red Sea, they have not, other than Bahrain, no Arab country formally joined the US task force. And that's one of the reasons why, is because they fear that what happened in Abikek would happen one more time. And Abikek is, you know, by far the single largest piece of petroleum infrastructure in the planet. Oil prices would probably rise $10 to $20 if Abikek was very badly damaged. And I think that keeps that as a deterrent. But it's one of the key reasons why a lot of this problem is happening, is that ABKEC, especially if you talk to the Saudis, their argument is that the failure of America to support Saudi Arabia after that attack and just say, oh, it's economic, you can afford to handle it, is one of the things that encouraged both Iran and the Houthis to develop that capacity. But what you are seeing the shift, I mean, the two things you mentioned, economic warfare, well, that's not new. What has been correctly said, until now, you didn't see the weaponization of attacks on white shipping that was considered outside the norm of battle. But now one technology, drones, short-range, long-range missiles are dirt cheap, very easy to procure. You can make them in your backyard almost and send them off. Low cost thing. And then the fact that the West in particularly, which was in many ways the guardian of the global commons, is now, the United States being obviously the main country, is now very reluctant to get involved in these kind of conflicts anymore. And then China, while it may be a rising power, is not filling that vacuum. So all you're seeing is just vacuums developing. India is doing a small part of this. We're not, I think we're very clearly not interested in getting involved in the fight on the Red Sea. But in the Arabian Sea, you can see that we're trying to fill up the gaps that are being caused by American ships being moved over to the Red Sea. But if you look at the latest cover of The Economist, I think it's about shipping. It's about who rules the wave, I believe is the title. And it's exactly this, that the West no longer has the ships to patrol the world. And the Americans have, come to India even 5-7 years ago. I can remember them telling India, whatever ships we have are going to go to China. They're going to be facing China in the Western Pacific. So we no longer have ships in the South Atlantic Ocean. We no longer have ships in South Central Indian Ocean. Those areas are just blank. And it was interesting that the Europeans had deployed ships, for example, in the Gulf of Guinea against pirates there and so on. All of their ships left and went to the Baltic and the Mediterranean after the Ukraine war broke out. So you have this incredibly stretched naval capacity globally. You remember Mike Mullen, the former chief of Navy Staff of America, had proposed a 1,000 ship Navy that the world produces.
Sounds like science fiction now.
Exactly. I don't think we could actually put together 1,000 ships anymore, even if everybody wanted to join. Even assuming U.S. and China were to get together, I don't know if there's 1,000 capital ships in the world left to be able to man the global commons.
Absolutely. And, I want to ask Captain Sharma the point that Pramit made, Captain Sharma, the 1,000-ship Navy, the Indian Navy has always been making these projections for a very large surface naval force to handle all these threats. But given the fact that, the way ship costs are rising, it costs a lot of money to build destroyers and frigates, is there a case for a lighter ship that we can make, smaller militarized OPVs perhaps, that you can, build in large numbers to fill those gaps that Pramit mentioned in the Indian Ocean?
As Pramit rightly brought out, even 1,000-strong Navy will not be able to patrol the global commons. So the first point which comes out to it, all the operations probably now will have to be kind of coalition operations, or maybe with some shared responsibility. It is just not possible, and that is what we are exactly doing. That in the Indo-Pacific part, the Indian Ocean is being handled by Indian Navy because we have that kind of capability and wherewithal. But if you ask me that beyond this, if I have to, if the Indian Navy has to deploy in the western part of the Arabian Sea, which is jutting out into the Red Sea, Gulf of Aden and beyond, and parallelly on the eastern side in the South China Sea or in the Southern Pacific, it is kind of near impossible, as the strength of the navies is as on today. Yes, we can look into making some smaller craft, but then Sandeep, for out of area operations, you need bigger vessels which have a bigger holding of armory,
endurance and capacity and all of that.
So but that's going to be, it doesn't match.
So that's going to be one of our areas that to watch out for, these problems that you mentioned, Captain Sharma. The fact that, as Pramit said, we don't have enough ships to put together to handle this new area of war that the the world is looking at economic warfare on a scale that's not been seen in recent times, at least not since the Persian Gulf crisis. But I'd like to thank my colleague Aditya Kaul, Captain Sharma and Pramit Pal for joining us on this very significant development that strikes by the US coalition on the Houthis and the possibility that this war could spread and engulf the Saudi Arabian Peninsula. Thanks for watching.
News 9 Plus. Download now.